Hello, today we are taking notes from Unit 1, Literary Analysis Workshop, and our Literary Analysis Workshop is focused on plot, setting, and mood. So before we read, we're going to survey the text, which is 3 pages, okay? 2 pages, 3 pages. We're going to look through the text to see what will we be discussing, what will we be actually, in this case, listening to, what information will you be expected to learn, okay? What is it about? Okay, plot, setting, mood, literary. So are we talking fiction or nonfiction? Right? Fiction, novels, stories. Okay, setting and mood. So I see part 1. Okay, I see that we're going to talk about one of the stories in the text. And then I see it talks about setting and mood. And we have an excerpt, a small chunk, an excerpt from a larger reading that we'll be looking at as a close read. Okay. I also see on the next page that we have information, this is page 26, about the 5 parts of the plot and the questions we should ask for analyzing the plot to understand it better. Take it apart to understand it. Okay, so we've surveyed the text. Let's begin. So there's a part 1 and a part 2. What should you do? You're going to take notes. What should you do? You should set up a notes chart. Most teachers in middle school, high school, and college will recommend that you use a Cornell system or a T-chart system with questions on one side and answers on the other. You need to do what works for you, what will help you learn the material. Please remember that this video workshop is available for you to watch and listen to as many times as you need to. Okay, it will be linked for you through our online classroom work. Okay. So with that said, what are some questions, what is some information that you will need to understand this section, part 1? You should ask yourself, what is setting? You need to know the answer to that. What does setting mean? What is setting? What is mood? And 2 important questions that will come up in the workshop lecture. What effects, oh, I see a typo. What effects do, right, because this is plural. What effects do, yeah, we're going to make that does. So what effects does setting have on a story? Notice that there are 4 effects listed. 1 effect, another, a third, a fourth. What words and clues hint at a depressing mood? And this is going to be in the excerpt that we read, that we do a close reading on. Okay, so take a moment. Set up your notes. Part 1, plot, setting, and mood. Every story transports you to a fictional world. In other words, it takes you to another place in your mind, a fictional world. You might be swept away by a love story, set during the Civil War, or mesmerized by a science fiction adventure that takes place on an uninhabited planet. So a science fiction adventure where you're on a planet that nobody else lives. Perhaps you've seen The Martian. Okay. No matter where and when they unfold, good stories allow you to experience times, places, and conflicts that are outside your everyday life. To understand why a story affects you as it does, you have to analyze the elements, the plot, the setting, and the mood that make up its world. Now let's go back. Where are the clues about setting? Do you see a clue about setting? I see where and when. Did you see that? Times and places. Okay, good. Part 1, setting and mood. Almost every story happens in a particular time and place. For example, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, dun, 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 dun. Right, Star Wars, that's how it begins. In a modern city would be another example of a time and a place. During the Great Depression, so the time is the late 20s, early 30s in the United States, but also around the world. That could be the Great Depression. The time and place of the story is the setting. You guys see it? The time and place of the story is the setting. Writers create setting. You understand that writers create setting through the following methods. This is what they do to create setting. They use details that suggest the time of day, year, season, or historical period. The Civil War, the Great Depression, the 1950s, the 70s, historical period. And they use descriptions of characters, clothing, buildings, weather, and landscapes. What does the world look like, the landscape? So I hope you're noticing this, details and descriptions. Another element that contributes, that adds to the world of a story is the mood, the feeling or atmosphere that a writer creates for readers. You see this comma? That comma is telling you that after the bold word mood is the definition of mood. So what is mood? Mood is the feeling or atmosphere, like the way the story feels, the environment, the atmosphere. The feeling or atmosphere. When you think about feeling words, happy, sad, mad. We're going beyond those words, and we'll come up with a list throughout the year of different mood words that will help us analyze fiction. Whether it is ominous, dun dun dun, oh no, what's going to happen? Ominous, that's a good mood word. Or uplifting, oh, I love that, that's so wonderful. The dog saved the cat, what a great story. Uplifting, okay? Whether it's ominous or uplifting. A mood is developed through a writer's use of imagery and choice of words and details. So, imagery, words, and details. What does imagery mean? You know the word image. I'm going to attach an image to my file, to my assignment, to my PowerPoint. So it's a picture. So writers use word pictures through the details that they give us. Setting details in particular help to establish a mood. So how do we get the mood? Much of it is through setting. The when and the where details help us know the mood. Okay, so we're going to look at an example here. So in your textbook, your reader, is a story excerpt called To Build a Fire, and it's on page 74. We're actually not reading it as an assignment in class, so this is the only assignment-based part of the story that we're doing. You're welcome to read it on your own. Jack London is an author who is respected and well known for his survival stories. His survival stories sometimes have to do with animals, like the famous book Call of the Wild. Okay, so to build a fire, the setting affects the mood and other elements of the story. The bleak, so that sounds like a mood word. The bleak story takes place, I'm sorry, I should go under so that I'm not covering up the word for you. Thank you. The bleak story takes place on a wilderness trail in the Yukon Territory, which is way up north, a region in far northwestern Canada. So you're thinking right around Alaska, but it's Canada. So bleak. Does that sound like a happy word to you? No. So we're talking about cold. There's no warmth. Bleak. Bleak is also a word to show sadness. No hope. Hopelessness. Bleak. So the setting and to build a fire. Okay, so the setting creates conflict. Creates the problem in the story. It's like man versus nature. Is he going to freeze to death? Okay, we see this picture of what we're talking about, the setting. Let's go here first. Man's frozen surroundings symbolize death and the indifference of nature to what people want. So there is the word, yes, it's cold, but nature can also be cold, as in nature doesn't care if you die in it. Sorry, I'm going to freeze to death. Not my problem, I'm nature. Okay, so it's a symbol of indifference, not caring. So that's one element, but let's focus here on mood. The setting creates a mood of alienation and fear in the face of a natural world that is indifferent, that does not care. In other words, a mood of alienation, being alone, being separate from everyone and everything. Okay, and here you are stuck, right? Stuck in the freezing cold. The only way you will be able to survive is if you can build a fire. So that's the problem, the conflict. Can he build a fire? It's a matter of life and death. Can he build a fire to warm his frozen limbs? His limbs are, your arms and your legs, your fingers and toes, your limbs. You know, if you're in the freezing cold, the first thing that happens is the blood will start to leave your toes and leave your fingers because your body is focused on keeping your heart beating and your brain alive. So you can actually lose function. It's called frostbite of your toes, and they could die permanently. And then, of course, the rest of you could die if you're in the cold too long. It's not good. No. So can the man build a fire to warm his frozen limbs? He faces conflicts like this one as he struggles to survive. Now the actual character, there's one main character in the story. He's overconfident at first. He thinks, I got this. I can do this. He's not just confident, he's overconfident. And that could be a problem when you are in an indifferent environment. Your confidence isn't going to save you. What you actually can do through experience can save you. So not only is he overconfident, he's inexperienced. He doesn't know what to do, but he thinks he does. And it's cold, and the man learns a life or death lesson. So all of that comes from the fact that the story takes place in a frozen wilderness where the main character has to be alone, and it's figure it out or die. You make a fire or you're dead. Okay. Next page. Okay, so we are on page 25, and we're going to use a model, an example. Okay. An example of setting and mood. At the beginning of the novel, Ethan Frome, the narrator, the voice in the story that's explaining what's happening, the narrator hears townspeople, people in the town, allude, it's a great word, we'll talk about that in a second, allude to a tragedy, right? Tragedy, tears, that ruined the life of the title character, Ethan Frome. Ethan. Let's read that sentence together. It's a little compacted, and we need to understand the parts. And before we read it, let me tell you what allude means. It means to hint at something else, to talk about it without saying it directly. Allude. Okay, now let's read it together. At the beginning of the novel, Ethan Frome, the narrator hears townspeople allude to a tragedy that ruined the life of the title character, Ethan. Again, let me hear the girls. At the beginning of the novel, Ethan Frome, the narrator hears townspeople allude to a tragedy that ruined the life of the title character, Ethan. And the gentleman. Great. Continuing, I will read. When a snowstorm hits the town, the narrator must spend the night at Ethan's, where he finally hears the entire tragic story. This excerpt begins as the storm is approaching. So we're going to hear a sad story, a tragic story that ruined the life of the main character. Excerpt, again, means a small part of a larger piece of writing. So this is on one page. The novel Ethan Frome is quite a large novel. Okay. From Ethan Frome, novel by Edith Wharton. We set out to Starkfield with a good chance of getting there for dinner. But at sunset, the clouds gathered again, bringing an earlier night, and the snow began to fall straight and steadily from a sky without wind, in a soft, universal diffusion, more confusing than the gusts and eddies of the morning. It seemed to be a part of the thickening darkness, to be the winter night itself descending on us layer by layer. I'm going to pause there. The question on the side, where and when does the story take place? So where? Do we see? Okay, we have Starkfield. When? Any clues? Okay, so it's a season where we have cold and snow. Okay, so we're probably talking about winter. Okay, describe the setting as completely as you can. So, this excerpt from Ethan Frome takes place in a cold winter night in Starkfield. Or close to Starkfield. On the way to Starkfield. It says we're setting out for it. Now, please look at this line here, line 5. A part of the thickening darkness, to be the winter night itself descending on us layer by layer. It's dark, it's raining, there's no wind. It feels like winter is falling on us. So this is mood, right? Let's continue and look for more mood clues. In the small ray of Frome's lantern was soon lost. Let me start again. The small ray of Frome's lantern was soon lost in this smothering medium. Medium here, we don't mean small, medium, large. We mean the element around you. The medium used here means the rain. So they're being smothered in rain, like a blanket thrown over their heads, smothered, or a pillow. So that is mood, isn't it? Smothering. I'm going to start again. The small ray of Frome's lantern was soon lost in this smothering medium, in which even his sense of direction and the bay's homing instinct finally ceased to serve us. 2 or 3 times some ghostly landmark sprang up to warn us that we were astray. Okay, I hope you saw that word ghostly and said, ah, that's mood. We were astray, we were lost. And if you didn't gather the meaning here, that's okay. Homing means finding your way. And I believe here when they're talking about bay, we're talking about a type of animal that is leading the way. I think it's a horse. Let's look that up. But even if we didn't get it, it's repeated here. Astray, homing. We're lost. 2 or 3 times, some ghostly landmark sprang up to warn us that we were lost, and then was sucked back into the mist. It's like a Stephen King movie. The Mist. Ooh, that's mood. And when we finally regained our road, we found our road again, the old horse, okay. Remember me saying, hey, that sounds like an animal? I wonder what kind of an animal is a bay now. What kind of an animal is a bay? It's an old horse. Okay. Context clues. If I stop in the middle of a sentence, I always try to go back to either the beginning of the sentence or the beginning of a dependent clause, which in this case would be after my semicolon. Otherwise, I lose meaning. Hint, hint, you should do this too. And when we finally regained our road, the old horse began to show signs of exhaustion. Sounds like a mood word. I felt myself to blame for having accepted Fromm's offer, and after a short discussion, I persuaded him to let me get out of the sleigh. So we're in a horse-pulled sleigh, right? Like the song Jingle Bells. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. Okay. I persuaded him to let me get out of the sleigh and walk along through the snow at the bay's side, at the horse's side. In this way, we struggled on for another mile or two. Struggle. And at last reached a point where Fromm, looking into what seemed to me formless night. It all looks the same, just darkness. He said, "That's my gate down yonder. Over there, down yonder." "Look here, Fromm," I began. "There's no earthly use in your going any farther." But he interrupted me. "Nor you neither. There's been about enough of this for anybody." I understood that he was offering me a night's shelter at the farm, and without answering, I turned into the gate at his side and followed him to the barn, where I helped him to unharness and bed down the tired horse. When this was done, he unhooked the lantern from the sleigh, stepped out again into the night, and called to me over his shoulder, "This way. Follow me. This way." Okay, so what's happening? He's lost. It's dark. It's raining. Fromm says you can sleep at my farm. In my barn. No, the horse is sleeping there. Far off above us, a square of light trembled through the screen of snow. Staggering along in Fromm's wake, that means behind him, I floundered toward it, and in the darkness almost fell into one of the deep drifts of snow, like a big pile of snow, against the front of the house. So again, mood. Staggering, floundered, almost fell, darkness. He's very tired. It's dark, cold, and tired. Fromm scrambled up the slippery steps of the porch, digging a way through the snow with his heavily booted foot. Then he lifted his lantern, found the latch, and led the way into the house. I went after him into a low, unlit passage, at the back of which a ladder-like staircase rose into obscurity, which is another way here to say unknown darkness. Okay, that's our excerpt. We have lots of mood clues. So rereading lines 1 to 11, what mood do the setting details help to create? How does it create a depressed mood? Darkness, smothering, lost, astray, exhaustion, staggering, flounder, darkness. Okay, can you see that? There are several clues here that show tired, exhausted, depressed, miserable. 3. What conflicts does the setting create for Ethan and the narrator? So the largest conflict here is man against nature. The dark night, the pouring rain, the snow everywhere. Identify 2 setting details that may hint. And this last question, question 4, the setting details. It says that the details have been boxed for you. Okay, or one detail has. A part of the thickening darkness, you see it? To be the winter night itself descending on us layer by layer. I noticed this sentence here. Do you also see it? Where we found 4 different mood words. Okay, you see it? I would box this in here. Well, I guess it continues down to here. That to me is our setting details. So we have the darkness, the deep drifts of snow, scrambling up the slippery steps of the porch, digging through the snow. So he's going to be telling something that's also dark and about something that happened to him. So slippery steps, staggering, falling, tragedy that happened in his life where he fell down in his life. All right, and that is an excerpt where we did a close read and we looked at how mood can be created by setting details, and also how the conflict can be created by setting details.